goes in your coaster in your car. That's what that is. It's a thirsty stone.
It's awesome.
You stick that in the bottom of your cup holder. You can have a coaster.
Well, we're 1 minute away from starting. I'm only seeing 2 council members so far. Everybody have the right link? I see 3. I think we have a quorum now. Ask at least all the council members to turn their video on if they could. All right, we're at 6 o'clock. We do have a quorum, and so I will call the special meeting or the round table of the City Council to order, October 12, 2020. And we'll ask Jody to please take the roll call.
Councilmember James. Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway. Councilmember Mayhew.
Here.
Councilmember Lassay.
Here.
Councilmember Sundwall.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Mayor Larson.
I am here. I still don't see Councilmember Jeans or Holloway, so if someone want to make a motion to excuse?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to excuse Councilmembers Holloway and Jeans from the roundtable meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, I think the motion passes 3-1, but
No one's ever done that, so I thought I'd see what happens.
yeah. All right, so with that, I'll turn it over. Who's taking the, Robert, are you taking things or Drew or?
Yeah, tonight, I mean, really, it's up to the council as far as what direction they want to discuss tonight. We can put up the summaries again. You can put up whatever you want to see, any questions you have. So we're ready to go. We're just following the direction of council.
Is the plans to do introduction of utilities at the next meeting?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's going to be at both the Parks and Public Works and the Finance and Administration Committees next week. We're going to have simultaneous two different presentations. Same presentation at both meetings next week. Great.
Councilman Lee.
Yeah, trying to figure out where the blue hand was. Sorry, you saw me. Yeah, so I think the notion was tonight that 2 weeks ago we were talking about the governmental operating budget, and I think we got to a point where we were, at least some of us, or I guess at least I had suggested that maybe if we maybe could indicate whether there are any remaining items that we need to discuss. I think there was a couple items discussed. I think I shared that I was satisfied with the budget and I didn't have any remaining items, but I think there were a couple others that various council members mentioned as being on their minds. And I think the idea was tonight, let's take this time to try and reach resolution on those items so that at least we are aware of items, and if we need to sort of take a vote to figure out where we're at least we don't have things sort of hanging out there. So Mayor, I think that was the hope for tonight. So maybe, and maybe if it's helpful, I'll just reiterate, well, I'm happy to hear about items other council members might have. And but at this point, I'm satisfied with the governmental operating budget as presented, and I'm in favor of it.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Mio. Robert, did you have a list of any other, or just, I'm sorry, first note that at 6:03, Councilmember Jeans has joined and joined the meeting. Robert, did you have a list of some of the outstanding items that were brought up last time that you might have looked into, and did you want to maybe start the conversation off by addressing any of those items for you or Drew?
I think we answered them individually for council members. I did want to, because I didn't follow back with council member Jeans, I wanted to make sure that he was satisfied with his answer, with the answers that he received. And then I'll also ask that same thing for the rest of the council member Jeans on the vehicles.
I think he said sure. He doesn't appear to be muted, but for some reason we're not hearing him.
Maybe his speaker's broken. Can you hear Bob? We can't hear you.
Yeah, you appear to be unmuted, Bob. Now you're muted. So you maybe your mic isn't plugged in or something's blocking it. Yeah, even when you're unmuted, it sounds like you're muted. There's just nothing coming through. So
You have like closed caption that can.
do the text. Bob, perhaps you could use a cell phone or something to call in, or use the number on that was provided to call in, so at least your audio can get into the meeting along with the video.
Or perhaps if you're happy that your questions were answered, you could simply give a thumbs up so we can move on to the next topic while you do that.
Here we go.
There we go. See, sign language. I know sign language.
All right, any other questions, items, discussion, council? Councilmember Ross?
I had a couple things. One, we've already agreed on affordable housing to work to look at possibly funding the plan in January at the council retreat. And now it's even more important because we're going to start receiving up to $270,000 because of the HB 1590 and 1406 that can be applied to affordable housing. So we just need to keep that at the top of the council retreat agenda to talk about how we can fund that plan. The other thing is the memo from Chief Carrera about the fire flow testing and also ladder truck. And these are important. The fire flow testing, is a requirement through the fire department accreditation and also the WSRB, and hopes to would help reduce insurance premiums. And it looks like in the memo that Mr. Hammoud and Chief Carrera were working on some additional different types of funding options. And so if we do not include it in our budget, that if they do come up with these funding options, that we will amend the budget down the road based on that and not wait for another 2 years.
Perhaps Rick or Robert, do you want to maybe respond to that at all? Or?
We could certainly provide an.
Just for the record, Councilmember Holloway joined us at 6:06.
Councilmember Ross, we can certainly provide later on an amendment to the budget for that ladder truck. As I actually had a discussion with the mayor earlier this week, we are going to do some intense looking at the charge outs, including the R&R fund.
You're becoming kind of garbled. Could you use the microphone? Or?
Is better at all?
Yeah, if you could just speak up, speak clearly, and speak into the microphone.
Sure. Sorry, I apologize. I actually have a microphone I ordered today.
Much better.
That's coming soon. We are going to be looking at the ER&R fund for its capacity. One thing we will look at when we look at the charge outs and we look at the model of that is whether or not we can proceed with the ladder truck, either cash funded right now or looking at some other option. But that's certainly something that we're going to address first thing in the new year, unless council has the imperative to look at it now. That is in our planning for our department to look at that immediately.
Rick, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, good evening.
I agree with you. My numbers are showing me about a 3.5 point drop off with Dalton now as the starting point.
If Councilmember Shepherd, if you could perhaps mute, or if there's background noise, if you could mute.
I think that came from.
I am muted.
House.
We had a ton of people aren't muted, like Catherine and Rick. Of course, Rick's talking, but.
Yeah, if everybody can mute, that would be great. Okay, I think we're good now, Mayor, council members. Yeah, so as Councilmember Ross had brought up, and those items, we are going to talk about those at our council retreat, because as we start the new biennium budget, we'll know more about what our revenues are for these last couple of months through 2020, kind of see where the economy is, kind of figure out what our priorities and goals are going to be, because like we talked before, a year ago, we set priorities and goals. A year later, a lot of things have happened. So it'll be probably good to look at those goals and priorities and figure out what we want to do moving forward. And a good time to do that is right away in January as we start new biennial budget. Councilmember Shepherd had brought up the fire hydrant testing. We did bring up the ladder truck. And we talked about the ER&R fund, especially police vehicles. That was resolved. I do want to mention with the ER&R fund that it's just not a bucket of money to pull together and buy a particular piece of equipment or something, or a vehicle for department. All these charge out that are done are to replace vehicles in a particular department. However, we will do whatever Mayor Pro Tem and the council and the group want to do. But I just want to remind the council that those charge outs are done so that we can replace vehicles in every department as we move forward. So it helps ease the cost of buying those things. Those affordable housing, I think we talked about tourism plan that we were pushing out because we don't have much tourism now, but that's something we could look at as well. We're going to look at, like you said, go ahead, Councilmember Ross, you had your finger up.
I don't recall pushing out tourism plan. I think it's funded $35,000 each year.
Okay, yes,
And
you're
that's
right.
the
Yes,
key,
you're right.
because we
But
don't
I
have
think that,
need it.
okay. But I think we talked about that would be on the list as well, because that is a study or something that we need to do. So I think we were going to add that, but it's strictly up to the council what they would like to see at that point. But the whole idea was to pass this budget. We think we have a very good budget right now, to pass this budget, and then in January start modifying that budget to meet the needs of our service, and then see where our revenues are as they come in for the rest of the remaining of the year. We will have some updates on union negotiations. Right now, it doesn't look like that concessions will be made. However, with that, we're going to look at some personnel expenses and a couple other things, and then we'll bring that back once probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll have a better idea of what that's going to look like, and I'll be able to present that to the committees and to council. So that's the only change immediate that we'll probably see before the end of the year. But everything we were going to, all these changes and these ideas that we were looking at, we were going to put on for that agenda for January, and then start that process for 21, moving into 22. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it back over. I'll turn it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Councilor Ross, did you have any further questions on those items you raised?
I do. So, Mr. Ridimitkin, did you just state that you're not going to get the COLA, that there's
No,
negotiations not going well, or what?
Thank you. I was going to speak to that, Councilmember Ross. I just wanted you to finish up any questions, further questions you had on fleet or fire truck or tourist plans and so forth. So just to put some numbers on there, just what we're facing. There was an email a couple of weeks ago that went out from one employee that referred to that financial dashboard we have that frankly hasn't been updated since PJ was here, and also kind of mixed capitals and ongoing revenues and capital and one-time revenue all together. And I think gave the impression to the employees that we were just sort of awash in a lot of resources and monies and didn't make a distinction between those pots of money. So we tried to address that by having an all-city meeting last week that I spent close to 40 minutes going through just the challenges we were facing and pointing out to the fact that unlike most cities, the bigger impact to us than the COVID crisis was what happened in the fourth quarter of 2019 with the loss of revenues there and the loss of TBD funds with I-976 was hugely impactful. And so it's sort of been a perfect storm for us. As you know, we've been striving to cut in the neighborhood of $600,000 from the general fund budget. What the COLAs would represent right now, what was recommended by the administration and approved by the council in the Teamsters and in the police contract, that's next year is its final year in that contract, would be a 3.5% increase for police, which represents $79,000 increase in costs to fulfill that contract for next year if they don't voluntarily concede that, and 2.5% for the Teamsters, which is another $125,000. Those combined alone are $204,000. The firefighter contract is done at the end of this year. As you can imagine, the firefighters aren't going to be real pleased if they're feeling like they're the only ones left out of an increase there. Management and professionals is essentially already conceded they won't be getting increases for 20 and 21. But you can imagine there would be a great deal of consternation there if all other groups were getting some sort of increase and they weren't. If the firefighters got an increase, even a modest one, we were figuring would be about another $44,000. So we're talking $248,000 total, or at least $250,000. And if you add M&P back to it, it probably pushes closer to $300,000, which means rather than cutting $600,000 from the budget, we're gonna have to be looking for a total of $900,000 because we've added, $300,000 or so, or $250,000 to the budget. So that would be painfully and egregiously going in the wrong direction to be adding that kind of significant cost while the revenue is bottomed out. And I'm pretty frustrated by it, as you can imagine, but it's going to result in some staffing cuts. And I've made it 100%, I hope 100% clear to the employees that to not think that layoffs are going to be sort of temporary ones where they, someone gets laid off and then in a year or two when things get better, like a recession, then we fill that position again. There flat out won't be any money to replace that. You have to, a reoccurring addition of $250,000 in expenses has to be replaced with a permanent cut of reoccurring expenses. Which means if you lay someone off, there isn't money there to put them back in there again, because that money was shifted to try and pay for those additional costs in the contract. And I'm discouraged that I'm not sure if that's quite fully understood, or there's this sense that somehow we have hidden buckets of money somewhere. I think the reserves is maybe what's confusing folks. We have a $14 million if you grab all the reserves from the different pots, rainy day fund, emergency, ending fund balances, everything, $14 million or in excess of that. But we have $30 million of infrastructure needs that go against that. And if you use the parkway as an illustration, if we don't, $6.5 million would be for the parkway alone. And if that's not done in a timely fashion, the cost on that could balloon 4 or 5 times if it has structural damage to it. So there's a time sensitivity, which means if you burn up all your capital or your reserves, then you don't have anything left over to tend to your infrastructure. And then those infrastructure costs suddenly quadruple within a short time. And the whole, everything just starts to be a very, unvirtuous cycle that the damage increases and it becomes very challenging. So this is very real. We're facing, I think, some real, as you can imagine, at $250,000 to $300,000, you're talking up towards at least 2.5, if not 3 FTE positions just to address that alone. And then of course I'm looking at the length that this crisis could go on. I'm more wary about the efficacy of using so much reserves than to plug that hole. And maybe the Band-Aid's got to be ripped off deeper if we just end up burning through reserves and we're end up in the same place. So anyway, that's a little bit of a heads up of what might be coming, because right now we're not getting very positive feedback from some of the other bargaining groups. Any questions on that?
I had a question, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Councilman.
Do we have any idea what other cities that are in similar negotiations right now? I assume COLAs are off the table there as well.
Rick could speak that more in detail. I just know in some meetings I've had in the last week, I was on one meeting with the mayor of Auburn, Nancy Backus, and she was explaining that they are in a position to try and do some very modest, like maybe 1% increases this coming year. But she also emphasized that's coming out of 2020, where like Issaquah, they made some quick actions and did wage decreases or cuts to the tune of 3.5% in 2020. So they made some significant, not only just keeping wages or compensation flat, they're not doing COLAs, they actually cut to the tune of 3.5%. We tried to just sort of protect things through 2020 and at least sort of maintain status quo through 2021. But again, why the seriousness of this isn't perhaps not being fully understood is a bit baffling to me. Yeah, in Issaquah, Rick could speak to Issaquah. We pulled an AWC survey that was done of cities around the states. And again, Rick could perhaps speak to that in more detail because he's often meeting with the city managers and administrators around the region on that. Rick, did you want to address that?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Sunwall. Yeah, so some of the cities are giving a 1% COLA rather than doing the 3 or the 2 or whatever was in the contract. Obviously, to get that down, there was some layoffs, position elimination. Issaquah laid off 22 people. They took a 7% pay cut citywide, and they did get concessions from their unions. We have not got concessions yet from our unions, so it forces us to look at personnel cuts, furloughs as well. It's difficult to furlough public safety, but furloughs for the Teamsters union, looking at maybe some positions in police and fire. However, with police and fire, it makes it very difficult not to fill positions and to basically cut positions or not, or do something like that because it is public safety. So we're taking a close look on that. Right now, there's a position in fire that we're holding for the time being until we can get some more numbers locked in. And we're looking at different scenarios. So if we're able to consolidate a position or not fill a position due to hiring freezes, is that position significant? Or is it absolutely needed for certification, that type of thing? So some departments, yes, some departments, no. So we're looking at every option, but to answer your question, no COLAs, decrease in COLAs. Some COLAs are just there per the contract. So to make up for that, they have to look at cuts on the back end of it. And then a few cities are doing a 1% COLA. So it's kind of all over. Different places are doing different things. When they did the survey, they were looking at some huge revenue deficits, and the biggest things they look at are not filling positions. They look at furloughs and they look at layoffs. And some cities have already just laid people off just at the start in preparing for 21 and 22. So we didn't do that right away. We figured hopefully we could get some concession for the COLA, because all we asked is 0 COLA for the 4 units, which are 3 unions, and then M&P. If that was the case, we would be good for 21 and 22. If there was 0 COLA for 21, 22, everybody would keep their job, business as usual. We could keep rolling. We did not get that so far, so we have to look at other things. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
there was,
thank
sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Sewell.
Yeah, I was just saying, yes, that answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've tried to emphasize to the employees that, look, if you're going to compare to another city, be careful to see what they did in 2020 versus us. You're comparing apples to apples. Again, I used Auburn as an example where, yeah, it looks like they're giving an increase maybe in 21, but then they had a pretty significant decrease in 20, which we did not have. And so those things should be taken into account. And I think it's important to emphasize that if there's any sort of COLAs going into 22 as well, then that's another, even if it's $100,000 or $150,000 worth of COLAs, and that's another FTE. I'm really not warm to the idea of furloughs, only because we clearly have some permanent loss of reoccurring revenue, particularly with, if we knew the salish was never going to happen, there would have been a levy lid lift geared up to go to fill that gap of that $250,000 loss that we're experiencing every year just to keep status quo due to the 3% inflation and only being able to increase property taxes by 1%, or in the case of last year, a 3% loss. So it's a pretty tough situation. And furlough is that's a temporary cost pause for a reoccurring cost increases or revenue losses, and it just simply doesn't solve anything. It just puts a Band-Aid on it for a few months or a year while you do a furlough, and it doesn't really solve anything. Councilmember Ross.
Mr. Ruderman, you were mentioning about public safety and not filling the firefighter position right now. And I guess I have a question maybe from Chief Carrera. Do we have a concern about not filling that position right now? Are we able to do the 3 firefighters on duty at 24 hours a day? Are we covered there, or?
Well, we're not. I guess I can speak first, and then Chief Carrera. The issue is not having those 3 firefighters per shift. So if this position does not get put in at the end of October, the fire department will have to look at different shift to cover that position being lost. Okay, so they're gearing up for that as well. And if they do that, that increases the overtime as well because of that different shift. And Chief Carrera could speak a little bit more to it. They actually need the position. Police has 2 positions right now, but we're trying to look at everything citywide and agency-wide. It's like I said, public safety is a difficult thing to try to decrease or to reduce staff because obviously for level of service, but level of service could be for anybody else as well. But I think there's more urgency there. And for me, I want to fill the position. I want to be able to go back and do that. And Fire have said they would look at working with us through these negotiations. What that's going to look like, we'll know a little bit more in a couple of 2 or 3 weeks. But we want to go ahead and fill those public safety positions if we can, right? So, but right now we're holding off so we can see the bigger picture. So maybe Chief Carrera can explain a little bit more of the urgency of that position and what they're kind of facing in the fire department.
Well, before the chief speaks, let me make perfectly clear. I do not support replacing the cut of a staff with overtime.
Right.
That doesn't solve a problem.
Right.
If you get a staff member, you're cutting reoccurring expenses. You don't solve the problem by replacing it with reoccurring overtime costs.
Right.
So it will result in a drop of level of service. So for example, it will be back to those 3 firefighters per shift that the department was struggling with prior to the levy lift in 2016. Police, it may come to where it's back to, for 4 hours in the early morning hours, maybe it's only 1 officer on duty, or we can't do two officers 24/7. I mean, what we're going to have to wrestle with too, that we'll have to take in a conversation with council and executive session is, do we cut from the departments that have stepped up and said, yeah, we'll pass on our claims and cut staff in those departments and keep for the ones that are dug in and demanding COLAs, and so that sort of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So anyway, I'd probably prefer to take it in an executive session for further detailed discussions with the council next week. But I have no problem putting some of this out here publicly right now. I think the community should be aware of what the community is facing. It's going to be a real real loss, drop in levels of service. It will be relying on any local response times will drop. What it would do is, prior to the levy with the shifts in the fire department, we were more exposed if there were multiple calls that came in, and we couldn't respond to that second call, perhaps, and to back up on East Side Fire and Rescue. We've just been accustomed to very high level response times in our community, and some are going to. The experience would be sometimes a response time that county residents experience if our levels of service drop to that level. Anyway, go ahead, Mark.
Sure. I think you guys covered it pretty well. The concern that we have is basically we're monitoring the budget very closely. We are filling that position with overtime right now to maintain the same levels of service that the public voted on in 2016. But depending on our budget status as we go throughout the rest of this year, we may need to reduce that. Like the mayor said, our only option at that point is to move 2 firefighters from the 24-hour shift to the day shift, and then basically run with unsafe levels in the evening, with having only 2 firefighters on duty. And if you recall, when we passed this levy, we talked about the ability to make rescues and put out fires, and we'll be right back to that same situation, even though the public safety levy passed. So I'm holding my breath, keeping my fingers crossed that the numbers look good and we can fill this position as soon as possible. We actually ran a process. We have somebody on the bubble who's waiting. I hope we don't lose him in the interim. But again, we're just waiting for the okay from the city administrator and the mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the council can, a lot of you have been talking to folks in the community. I mean, being at chamber meetings every Wednesday and human service meetings and all that, I'm just very leery that when we're going to need all the political capital we can and goodwill in the community, if we're going to be successful in a levy lid lift next year, that since economic development and other things are not necessarily on the horizon, and the mill site's even questionable given the industry that the owner is involved in, that folks getting a whiff of a cost of living increases during this time would be not received well by many people in the community. Councilmember Mayhew, and then Councilmember Shepherd, then Councilmember Sumwell.
Actually, I was third in line behind the other 2.
Okay, I'll go Councilmember Shepherd, then Mayhew, then Sumwell. I'm doing a little round robin because Councilmember Sumwell was one of the last to speak.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I can't hear you sometimes. That's why I'm got my hand up.
Oh, okay, thank you. Were others having the same issue?
Yeah, the problem was that when Carrera's mic was on, it was going over you. When he cut his mic out, then it was fine.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you need to repeat anything. Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, so I just want to say this is all very, very tough. My point of view, though, comes down to what at the end of the day is, I think, pretty simple. Our revenues are down. We're in a recession. We are more fortunate than most of the cities around here in that this prior iterations of this council established a rainy day fund. And so we have some cushion to get us through this, and most cities don't. Issaquah didn't have any rainy day fund. They had to move immediately. So as much as it is, and public safety is more than half our budget, folks. So if we're facing revenue going away, we can cover some of that with the rainy day fund, but we can't cover 3.5% COLAs and things like. There's just not enough money there, unless the recession ends in the next couple months, which it isn't going to. So I think just like every other city, we have to talk with our employees about, hey, we do have a rainy day fund. If you will work with us, we can find a way to keep all of these positions. And as soon as this recession turns, we're able to come back and talk to you about COLAs probably sooner than most cities. But an idea that we're just going to burn through our rainy day fund in the next 6 months and suddenly have to have massive layoffs and we're out of reserves, I think would be irresponsible. I think what I'm hearing from administration, which is we have to talk to our employees now about ways we can avoid layoffs now. And it is layoffs, it's not furloughs. Furloughs just, you heard that story, furloughs and then there's overtime, you didn't save anything. So it's working with us. We can use the rainy day fund. If the employees will work with us, we can get through this and we can be back as soon as the economy's ticking back up. We can talk about, how we get them, how we work with them for what they gave up. But if they're not going to work with us, there isn't enough rainy day fund to do COLAs, and they're going to have no choice. And yeah, it's going to cut levels of service in public safety. There's no way around it. There's just a fact of life of how much money we're taking in and what the costs are. So I am very hopeful that the administration is going to be successful in these discussions with the staff groups. These are tough discussions. If I'm in one of those staff groups, I'm not, it's not a fun discussion to have. But all our residents are having these discussions. Many of them are losing their jobs or getting furloughed. But it's tough for all of us, and unfortunately, it's one way or another going to be tough for our employees as well. And hopefully, we can work with them, to find a way through that can kind of work for everybody. But I just wish you luck, Mayor and City Administrator, and I hope I hope that there's a good dialogue and you can get through this and find a way through this. But at the end of the day, I think the council has to be aware if they can't get a movement on this, they're going to have no choice but to cut positions because there's just not enough money. There just isn't. And our citizens, our residents, they're losing. They don't have the income they used to have. They can't step up for us. Okay, enough said.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman May. I should have noted, you reminded me that we are using the rainy day fund. In fact, we've done it in 2020 to the tune of $500,000 or $600,000, and a similar amount for planned for 21 and 22. So again, we were cutting to the tune of $600,000 in the 2020 budget, supplementing that with a rainy day fund to an equal amount. So if you add the COLAs that go to 900,000, that's a combined cut of 1.4 to 1.5 million dollars that we're having to make because of that pretty devastating loss of revenues at the end of the fourth quarter in 2018. And you're right, we're doing better than many communities with the COVID crisis. But when you add what happened in the fourth quarter 2019 to that, we're not doing so well. In fact, we're probably more challenged in some communities because of that. When I went back and looked at those numbers, what struck me was that the loss from that was actually bigger than the projections we're projecting for the loss due to COVID right now. And so that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind. Councilor Sumwell.
Yeah, there's a heads up to Chief Correa to get ready, or Chief Carrera to get ready to speak. So something near and dear to my heart is I watched one house burn down twice. And my recollection from Chief Carrera was that at least the second time, if not the first time, had we not had 3 on staff, we would have had to sit there and wait for Fall City or East Side or whatever to show up. So if that's where we want to go, That's where we're headed. If we have to go down to 2, is that right, Chief Carrera?
We actually had 4 people on duty, both of those fires, because we had our volunteer augmenting it, and both times we were fortunate to have the 4th volunteer be a volunteer firefighter, not just an EMS responder. So, and that allowed the companies to break up into 2 groups and protect both of those houses on each side of that large house that was in the middle burning. And through accreditation, which if we do cut our staffing, we would lose. But through accreditation, we now look at property saved, and we saved about $9 million. We figure we saved about $4 million in property that night, even though we only lost 1. So yes, you are correct, Councilmember Sunwell.
All right. Councilor Sunwell, did you have something else? You still had your hand up?
No, that's good. I'm good.
All right, thank you. Any other items for the budget, Council? Councilor Ross. You're muted, Councilor Ross. There you go.
So you also mentioned there's 2 police positions that we haven't filled. What type of positions are those?
I believe those are 2 police officers. They're right now. Chief Phipps is in, I guess, the interview process. They're in background check right now, a lie detector test right now. There's, I think, 3 candidates for 2 positions. So we're looking at those. Both those positions, are they needed? Maybe one's needed and one isn't. So we're looking at that as well. Like I said, we're looking across. We got 11 positions that are open right now. So we're looking at how can we consolidate positions? Do we have ways where, like we did with Nicole, where we took the events coordinator and combined it with the executive assistant, right? So that saved us over 100,000, right about 100,000, and yet kept the person and still providing the service. We're looking at those a little bit closer. But like I said, public safety is a tough one, Councilmember Ross. You know, it's just like, Councilmember Sunwall brought up and other things. We're talking, as far as defensive firefighting, offensive firefighting, and what that does, and accreditation, levels of service, response time for both, right, for police and fire. So we have great departments on both ends. So it's very difficult for me to try to put scenarios together to cover that 900,000, if you will, or to cover those losses. And so what's going to be the best planned scenario for our city moving forward? And it's not just for 21. I have 2 union contracts that are up in 21. And so we're going to look at long-term contracts starting in 22. If 21 is a disaster financially for our area, for our region, what are we going to do for 22 moving on? So if we temporarily decrease expenditure for 21, you really have to look at the long term. So we really need to look at 22, 23, and 24, and then rebuild it if the economy comes back. But when you rebuild it, just like the mayor said, you got the running scenario where the revenue runner is way out front, or where's it? The expenditure revenue is way out front, and the revenue runner is trying to catch up, right? So you got to play catch up, and then you got to play catch up before you reach that original level of service. And by then you're 2 years down the road, so the level of service needs to be higher. And so you got to look at those things as well. So if we do a temporary fix for 21, is that really going to help us for 22, 23, and 24? M&P are not getting COLA right now in the budget for 21 and 22. We just asked the unions to look at 21. We haven't even got to 22 with the unions. So like I said, because we have 2 contracts up in 22 and fire is going to be up in 20. So yeah, it's not fun. But we're trying to do everything we can to be fair and equitable across everything. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. So that's kind of where we're at.
So follow-up question. So then are we using overtime also for the police officers?
Not that I think there's a little bit of overtime used for police. They've saved quite a bit of money in their budget through salary savings and other things. So it's fire that really has the expense with overtime, because they can't save as much, say, as the police department did for 2020. So with that being said, we have to find ways to either stop the overtime, which means decrease the level of service, or provide the employees that they need so so that the overtime stays at a nominal level, because everybody uses overtime, right? The whole agency, we have overtime, factored into the budget. So whenever you have a decrease or a position that's on hold or a position that's trying to be filled, right? It takes 2 or 3 months to get an employee, you backfill with overtime on that. That's mostly acceptable, but it's when you have to backfill overtime for months and months and months to try to keep a level of service up. So if the level of services decreases, no overtime to backfill because that position doesn't exist anymore. So you have to look at what your level of service is going to be. And that's just not for fire. And that's for police and for public works and for everybody, right? So so we're trying to minimize expenditure. We're trying to provide the level of service, but we're also trying to meet that little less than $1 million worth of cuts that we have to meet, so we can balance that budget moving into 21, and hopefully it goes through 22 as well. We just don't know, because we don't know what the economy is going to be in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Hope that answers your question on that.
It does. Thank you.
Councilmember Holloway.
So are we going to talk the proposals on utility program? Or is that going back to Public Works and coming back?
Mayor Pro Tem, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that goes back to Public Works next week, Councilmember Holloway, and 2 weeks from now it'll come here before the council.
Did my homework. Okay.
I did it for the meeting last week, so don't worry.
Thank you for being prepared anyway. Councilmember Holloway. All right. Councilmember Jeans. Okay, Bob, even though you're unmuted, we still can't hear you. Did you try to call in by phone? Bob, perhaps you could re-log in. Maybe what happened is when you logged in, you might have chosen, rather than computer audio, phone audio, which makes your computer audio not work. If you logged in again, and when it gets to that prompt, make sure you click join with computer audio, not with phone audio. That might be the issue. Councilmember Shepherd.
I just had a little question. When we sent the firefighter down to California, was that something that we partially pay, or is that something that is completely burdened by the outside agencies? That's
a great question. Chief Kerr, you want to take that?
Sure. So that money and all the firefighter's time while he's down there fighting the incident and any backfill that's required is reimbursed from the state of California through the state of Washington. So there is no cost to the city.
But our practice has not been to put that back into the fire department. It goes in the general fund, right?
That is correct. There's a few other things that come through as well. But yeah, and we track all of that in our overtime charting report. So I can certainly provide you a report on that. But yeah, you are correct. It goes into the general fund.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, if there's no other questions of the budget this time, then I'll give it a few more seconds. I don't think anyone's going to protest if we have a generous 15-minute break between now and the council meeting. Rick, go ahead, and then Councilor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, council members. I guess for me, one of the reasons why we put this meeting together was to take care of any last minute types of questions, answers, make sure everybody's comfortable. For me, with what we're hearing, I kind of like to know if we have a majority, or we have a kind of a nod that you're okay with this budget, so that we can move on to take care of utilities as we move forward. And then when we bring this back in December, we'll have more ideas on the union and what we're going to be doing with that, if there's any adjustment. But I think for me, it would make me feel a whole lot better if I knew that there was, at least we say, yeah, we're okay with this budget, Rick, with a couple little changes, maybe with union when you have it coming, and then move into the utilities, because utilities is going to take a little bit of time. So if I'm out of line, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Mayor, let me know. But I think I'm just kind of looking for a little bit of resolution for this particular operations type in the non-utility capital budget. So thank you.
All right, so maybe to make sure we don't make the city attorney too nervous that we're making votes during a roundtable, I'll just kind of flip it around and say, are there any objections or anyone that has concerns about the budget the way?
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't mean to get anybody in trouble.
That's all right, Rick. I know you didn't mean it. So hearing none. Bob, or Councilmember Jeans, is your audio working? Can we test that? Or Bob, go ahead and say something. Let's see if we can hear you. Councilmember Jeans, we can hear you. Yeah, so when you log back in, you hit join with computer audio, and that's what did the trick, I think. So
Good.
perfect. Okay. I saw you trying to call on the phone, and before you did that, I wanted to
Nice.
see if you're good. Okay.
So I had a brief point to make.
Oh, there we go. And then I'll come back to Councilmember Mayhew. Go ahead.
I think we all understand the importance of people over products when it comes to police and fire for public safety. And especially at the moment, I'm thinking of fire and our need to replace a fireman. It seems to me we ought to put either on the back burner or more on the back burner the discussions about a ladder truck, because we have gone without a ladder truck for so long, and we do have options of a ladder truck help out of Issaquah, I think. Probably not as good a service, but we've lived with it for now. So my suggestion is we stop talking about a ladder truck if that is a matter that some people think should be high on our priority list.
I think we've heard that loud and clear, Councilmember Jeans. And the only question at this point is, do you feel it urgent enough to resolve that before the end of the year to have it in the current budget? Or is everybody satisfied that we will take that up in earnest in January at the council retreat and resolve that issue, or how to fund that appropriately, using some, because you're gonna have to do some trade-offs. What do you want to give up to get that done? But everybody should go into it eyes wide open. So are you, I think everybody's been on board that. Are you okay with that approach?
Yes.
All right. Councilor Mayhew, thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem. I was, let's see, am I muted? I'm not good. So I was going to say the same thing that Mr. Rudemetkin said, which is, although I do disagree with him, if they, Mayor, Mr. Rudemetkin, if you bring the budget back in December, you will be too late. We have to pass it. And unless you think we're going to have a bunch of special meetings the week of Christmas, which I don't, I hope it's not December. I think you're gonna have to come back to us in November with the budget, like you do most years. So hopefully that was a slip of tongue. So council members, the thing that came up over the last week is coming out of our last meeting. So we have this little group with the mayor and Mr. Rudemetkin and some staff support where we are sort of trying to keep these budget roundtables, these budget discussions on track, as we've been doing all year. So the question 2 weeks ago coming out of our meeting, our council meeting, was, is the council, are there any issues remaining with the governmental operating budget that need resolution? Because otherwise we're moving on to utilities, and this budget that we've seen, that's what they're going to bring to us in November, and we're going to be out of time. We'll have public hearings, and then we'll need to pass it. So there won't be much time to spend on it. Just hearing from the public and responding to that pretty much will be what we have. So if we have any issues remaining on this, we've got to know now, and we've got to hash those out. So I told that group that I thought that we that all issues were resolved for now, and that if they brought this budget, that it was ready to be passed. Now I put that question that the mayor and Mr. Rudemetkin asked me, are you sure? So I put that question to F&A committee last week, and F&A committee wasn't sure. So that's the thing that we really need to make sure we're resolved on tonight. If there's anyone that has an issue remaining that says, I think we need to put X into the budget now, then please let's get that surfaced tonight now. Because if we don't bring anything up, then that's what they're going to put in the budget, and we're just not going to have time in the future really to discuss much. So that's my plea to you. If you have any nagging issues, let's bring it up now, and let's get to a resolution as a council. either convince each other or take a vote, or maybe we can't take a vote, but get a sense of the council so they know they can move on. So that's my request. If any of you have any remaining items, please on the governmental operating budget, please sort of raise it now or kind of save it till January and we'll deal with it then. That's my request to you.
Councilmember Ross, Councilmember Shepherd, Holloway, and then Sunwell.
Okay, so first of all, I wish you good luck, Mr. Rudimentkin, on the COLA, because I'm not sure how we're going to balance our budget if we don't get a reprieve on some of the contracts. Overall, the general budget, I'm fine with it. I will make a statement. I'm concerned about not filling that firefighter position and the 2 police officers position. I don't feel that we should reduce our level of service at all in either one of those areas. And our population has not declined. It has increased since we filled those, since we brought the firefighters up to 15, and since we had the 2 detective positions for the police officers. So I have a concern not filling those 3 positions, but otherwise I am fine with the rest of the budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Ross. Councilmember Shepherd.
So my primary concern is making the decision about the fire truck after we consider the capital improvement plan for utilities. I really think that there's going to be a lot of decisions made in terms of spending, and it's going to be prioritized as last. And I think that needs to have a higher priority than what we have in our utility capital improvement plan, as well as the fire hydrants. And I think that all of the fire hydrants need to be pressure tested, not just some of them.
All right, thank you. Just to know, we can't by law use capital utility capitals or enterprise fund for a fire truck purchase. Councilmember Holloway and Councilmember Sunwell.
So I guess 2 comments. One, Jim, I'm not going to, never ask me to presuppose what my vote will be. I will never tell you until I have to vote. Okay, there may be more information or something else that comes in. Having said that, I would say if for some reason I want to go tweak something, it's probably incumbent upon myself and others. If you want to tweak something, if it's a plus, you need to find a minus. And you need to come with a balanced proposal moving forward. But I still think the door is open for those balanced proposals if we can find them. That's just my put on that.
Yeah, thank you. And if I could add one more thing to your rule, if you do a plus, you have to, if you do a one-time plus, you have to do a one-time minus. If it's an ongoing reoccurring plus, it's going to be a
Amen.
Reoccurring minus. So too many people are thinking like they can fix a reoccurring plus with a non-reoccurring minus. So that's profoundly important distinction to make. Councilmember Sunwell.
Yeah, given the circumstances, I'm fine sort of shelving this and putting this in 95% ready to go. I will say, if you're going to add or subtract from this, not only do you have to find an opposite, you got to find 3 other people to vote with you. Because we're running out of time. So now's the time. And if you don't bring it up now, I mean, even if you bring it up now, you're still probably going to need to find 3 other people that agree with you.
All right, Councilor Mayhew.
Just wanted to make the point, just to make sure everyone.
We're at 6:55, so I'll conclude it with you, Councilor Mayhew, because we'll take a quick break before the council meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to make sure everyone knows, the governmental operating budget that they've proposed to us is not balanced. It goes in the hole. It uses up rainy day fund, somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000. I forgot the exact number, but it's over 400,000 of our rainy day fund gets used up just in 21. So, and that's based on the more rosy revenue pictures of the ones that were presented to us. So, but I still agree with the Holloway principle there, which is, and I think this is what he meant, which is, all right, we're at that 400,000, some between 400 and 5, whatever that number is, we just can't take that any higher. So if you want to add some more spending, you're gonna have to subtract something out, because we can't there's just no more, there's a little bit more rainy day fund, but we're gonna need it for 22. We just can't go down to zero. That's just the one caveat, is just so everyone's clear. This is a deficit budget, which we can only do because of that rainy day fund, and this is the rainy day.
What's the current rainy day balance?
I don't know what it is, because of course we're in the middle of the year, and that they'll let us know as they get to the end of the year. But going
Is it 1
into
million? Is it
20,
5 million? What is it?
oh no,
Robert?
going into 20, it was, I think, somewhere in the vicinity of $1.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah.
some of that has been used in 20 as well.
And to Councilor Mayhew's point, he mentioned the 400,000 was in the rosy scenario. I think we've already had discussions that point out it could go worse, which means that rainy day fund gets eaten to maybe into the tune of 600,000. We told the employees, if you're giving COLAs and all that, we're not going to come back asking more concessions from you. If the scenarios got worse, it would come more out of the rainy day fund. That's our commitment to them. So again, that's part of my frustrations, but that's very important. That's part of why we don't want to dip any further in the rainy day fund, because it could get a lot worse. And if we dip too deeply into it, there's no reserve within the reserve, so to speak, to buffer for at least 2 or 3 years. So we got to be cautious about those things. So, all right. So with that, let's take a 5-minute break. What, 6:57? Council, you want to maybe pick it up at 7:05? We have a fairly light meeting tonight, so I think we can afford to start a little late. So we'll start at 7:05, and given that, I'll let Robert has one more.
Yeah, just a side note on that question by Councilmember Sunwall. We're going to come with an updated revenue estimate, again, once we get the August sales tax numbers in. So we are aiming for that first meeting in November, the first council roundtable in November. That first meeting in November is when we would have that updated revenue forecast.
When do we have to have the budget approved for King County to be able to collect the appropriate taxes?
Believe it's the first or second week of December. Okay. We already have the property tax information, and again, you can take that as a separate item as well.
Okay.
Yeah, approval's traditionally done that first meeting in December. So, all right, with that, let's adjourn the roundtable meeting. And again, folks can just turn off their video and mute, and we'll see you back here at 7:05 sharp. Thank you. Yeah, if I could ask the council members all turn their video back on, please, so we know everybody's at least have a quorum. Perhaps people should mute.
That was
I
not
know
me.
what the councilman will say was.
All right. All right, with that, I'll call the Snoqualmie City Council
That
meeting,
was not me.
and I'll ask Jody, if you could please take the roll call.
Certainly. Councilmember Jeans,
Here.
Councilmember Ross,
Here.
Councilmember Holloway,
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew,
Here?
Councilmember Lassay,
Here.
Councilmember Sendwall,
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Here,
Mayor Larson.
I am here, thank you. Council, I have a motion, a second to approve the agenda as presented tonight.
So moved?
Second.
And a motion, a second to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Shepherd.
hello?
Yeah, Councilmember Shepherd, go ahead. We'll remove the warrants.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, for no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. All right, motion is approved. With that, we'll move on to public hearings, presentations, and appointments. At this time, the public hearing regarding the 2020 CRS Annual Progress Report is now open at the Community Rating System. I see we have 5 attendees tonight. If there's anyone here that wanted to speak on the Community Rating System report, you'll notice down in the participants box, there should be a little button at the bottom. There you go. Okay. Mike Bernard would like to speak at this time to this item.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well,
Mike, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have about, Jody, refresh my memory, for public hearings, are we doing 3 minutes?
I don't need that much time.
It would be 3 minutes, sir.
3 minutes, Mayor.
All right.
Anyway, it's Mike Bernard. I live at 38460 Southeast First Street on the corner of Fir and Maple. And we've lived here for 2 years, and we love the city of Snoqualmie, particularly downtown Snoqualmie, but we have one issue with a tree outside our yard, which is causing a lot of difficulty with our gardens and house, and it's a huge, I think you're all probably familiar with it. I've talked to a few of you about it.
So Mike,
Yeah.
I mean, we can indulge you here, but this is actually a time to speak to the 2020 Community Rating System Annual Progress Report on sort of flood issues. There will be an opportunity for citizen comment coming up very shortly or following this.
I didn't know, because I tried to get a hold of Jody, and she said I didn't, look at the
I understand. No
the
problem.
agenda, so I just thought let me know when you want to hear me. I'll go ahead.
Yeah. So if you could just be a little more patient, I'll call you up right this comment. So thank you. I see Chris and Henriotto, Riley Bates, and Wayne Russell. Wayne, welcome back. Is there any of you who would like to have an opportunity to speak at this time to the 2020 CRS Annual Progress Report? And Mike, if you could just put your hand down, that would be helpful too when we get to public comment.
Can you give them instructions on how to raise their hand?
Well, Mike seemed to figure it out pretty quick. Mike, I don't see exactly what you see as an attendee. Could you, or Jimmy, could you unmute Mike again? And Mike, can you explain to the other members of the public what you did to raise your hand?
Well, I clicked the little hand icon at the bottom of my page. It was right square in the middle, and it says raise hand, and I click on it. And then it gives me after that an option to lower hand.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's on the main screen. It's in the middle and the bottom. So if you just sort of tap, because some of those menus would disappear when you're under.
It's under Mr. Retta Metkin. That's where it is on my screen.
Okay. Rick might be different on other screens. Yeah. If you just sort of tap on the screen, those buttons will show up. They sort of sometimes disappear if you're, then that would allow you. So I'll give it, anyway, I hope the other 4 of you had an opportunity to maybe do that if you wanted to, but I don't see anyone else raising their hand. So with that, I will call the public hearing on the 2020 CRS Annual Progress Report closed. And then for the sake of time, Council, the very timely that it is Affordable Housing Week. I think it was a great achievement that we have some of the most significant resources to address this issue, including homelessness in our community than we've ever had in my tenure here with the passage of the 0.1% sales tax. And so looking forward to, as Councilmember Ross said earlier, to kind of digging into some exciting things we might be able to do with that. But otherwise, the proclamation is in your packet. I don't believe there's any, unless one of the members of the public are here to receive that. I'll just point you to that to read that. Are any of the members in attendance here tonight here to receive or be here for the proclamation on Affordable Housing Week? If you could raise your hand real quick. All right, seeing no one raise your hand, then we will go on to what they're probably looking for. Moving on to citizens' comments. First, a few ground rules. One, Snoqualmie citizens have a right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient and orderly manner. Therefore, comments for those that do attend a council meetings will be limited to 3 minutes each, so that the thousands of folks that don't attend the council meeting at least can have us the council perform their duties. Second, please wait to be recognized and state your name and address for the record. 3, direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. In order to protect the privacy rights of employees and protect the members of the public from legal liability, please note that this is not the appropriate venue to make complaints or accusations about an implied or named city employee or agent. Such oral comments will not be allowed, but can be submitted in writing to the city clerk. And 4, please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council will simply quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns. So with that, is there anybody, member of the public that would like to comment? Mike, I'll go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, sir.
I've noticed that now we no longer have a quorum of council members with their videos on. I believe we need to maintain that throughout the entire meeting.
Okay.
Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Shepherd.
My concern is that I think that sometimes we have some troubles with our internet connections if we all have our videos running.
Yeah, I'm counting on, I mean, it's an honor system. And I assume if a council member is still dialed in here, I'm not so concerned that their video is off as I am that they're in attendance. So I'm assuming I noticed the two that had the videos off were eating. They probably didn't want to see everybody eating them on a public record. So I'll leave that.
Just throw me out in public.
Oh, I didn't even see you, Councilmember Holloway. I was noticing 2 others eating. So I'll leave it up to your discretion, folks, on whether you want to turn your videos off on. I just want to make sure at least that your name is, you're still logged in. And to Councilmember Shepherd's point, maybe that helps with some, I'm not seeing any issues with audio or video tonight, but if someone does, please bring that to the chair's attention and we can maybe ask others to turn off if that helps. So again, so back to public comments. Mike, I'm going to open the floor to you. Again, you kind of same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes to go ahead and speak. I don't know if Mike lost a mic. I noticed there's not a microphone icon on any of the other. Chris had one temporarily, Chris Otto. Mike, are you? There we go. Now, if you could, Jimmy, if you could unmute Mike Bernard, please.
I think can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. There you go.
I take it that timer's for me. Is that what you're holding that up for?
Yeah, that's just
that's kind of intimidating, but anyway. Yeah, I live on the corner of Maple and First Street. We've got, the only issue I'm here to talk about is our European beech tree that is enormous and out in the yard. It's a beautiful tree, and we'd like it to continue to be beautiful, but it definitely needs, it's a risk to both to the public and particularly to our house because of the way it's been trimmed, or what do you call that, trimmed? Pruned in the past. My wife recently wrote a letter to several staff and to some, at least to Mayor Larson, and we just haven't heard anything back. And that seems to be the issue for us, is to getting a chance to talk to somebody. And I mean, we're not trying to cause a big problem, but the tree can't be pruned without Puget Power turning the power off because of its proximity to the power line. So it's we're not expecting the city to bear the full burden of the cost of the thing, but at the same time we would just like some help and somebody we could talk to who's going to deal with it in some way, shape, or form, because it's been a while and we've tried to create a a nice home in the neighborhood that was maybe not in such good shape before, and put a lot of resources into it. And I think we have some legitimate issues with the tree. So simple as that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. I'll ask our city administrator to just bring that up at the executive staff meeting tomorrow morning. Well, I know that Phil's been in several conversations with you, and so we'll see if there's anything else we can do on that one. Wayne, go ahead. Wayne Russell. Jimmy, yeah, there we go.
Wayne Russell, 8438 Meadowbrook Way, Southeast. First, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for getting most of the parking spots back, but several of my neighbors still aren't happy about the mailbox in front of the Old Trails End building. Because it's still taking up one parking spot. And some of them said to me, maybe we should just put our own mailboxes in front of our houses, and we won't have everybody parking in front of our houses. So anyhow, thanks again. But my concern right now is the mill pond or Boris Lake with that breach in the weir. I've talked to Jason Roberts a little bit about it, and the weir is leaking so bad right now. As I took pictures that some of you may have seen or may not have seen of the stream of water going through the breach east of the weir. And the geese actually were swimming in the stream, and then they actually got up and stood on the ground because that lake is draining so bad. And that is supposed to be a revetment for floodwaters. And we're getting to that time of year where you're going to have water washing in and out. From last fall, that breach, or a year ago, that breach is open from about 8 feet to probably 20 feet wide now. And so right now, if you drive by the lake and you look at it, it's lower than I've ever seen it since I've been in the valley since 1979. And pretty soon you're going to be dumping stuff that's in that lake in the water, and nobody's are into the Snoqualmie River if there's already not, because it has not been tested for toxins. And I really believe that silt on the bottom, since hemlock logs were soaked in there, creosote, the PCB spill from the transformers, I believe it's a major environmental issue, and somehow it's got to be addressed. Jason said the city talked to Weyerhaeuser, but Weyerhaeuser doesn't want to take care of it. And they're talking about just dumping gravel in to fill the ditch in if breach isn't contained. So anyhow, that's about my big gripe for right now. And I'm going hunting, no masks.
All right,
I just had to get in to see you guys. Thanks for everything.
All right, good to hear from you, Wayne. Rick, could you add that to the agenda well for the staff after 10 a.m.? Brief me on any issues with the breach that we might need to know about. All right, Jimmy, if you could unmute Chris Otto, please. All right, Chris, we should be able to hear you now. Go ahead. Oh, you got muted again somehow.
Okay. How about now? Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Otto. It's 43357 Southeast 77th Street. I'm here as a merit badge counselor with Henry Otto, Riley, and Rory Bates. They're all completing their citizenship in the community merit badge, which is an Eagle Scout required merit badge. And one of the requirements is to attend a city, town, or county council or school board, municipal board, or state court session. And Mayor Larson and city council members, we're glad to be here tonight and to be able to do this from the comfort of our own homes. Just so you know why we're here and who we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'm so sorry we can't have you at a council meeting in person. That's our special guest for the evening, who gets a special dispensation to raise their hand at any time during the meeting and ask questions. I'll certainly afford you that opportunity here as well. And I'm sorry, Chris, did you say was it Henry or Riley that was who's the scout getting the badge?
Yeah, Henry, Riley, and Rory are all on this call. All three of them are working towards their Eagle Scout right now. So
appears Rory didn't get dialed in correctly, but
well, he's got a twin brother, so they're probably sitting at the same screen anyhow. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, too bad you guys didn't have video. I'd love to see it too. But thanks for joining us. And anytime you want to reach out to my office, I'm happy to even meet on a Zoom call.
Yeah, in fact, I do just want to let you know we're having Matthew, I forget his last name now. He's overseeing the Highway 18 interchange project. And he's joining us on Wednesday, this group again, so they can kind of ask him some questions about that project and get to know a little bit more about how that's worked with the city and his role in it. So Appreciate the city being involved, and thanks, everybody.
That's great. Yeah. Well, congratulations, boys, for your
Oh,
endeavors.
there's Mark Hoffman. It's Mark down there. Yeah, Mark. He's
You
joining
can call
us.
me Matthew, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Mark. I actually see your name there. I remember.
No worries.
Yeah, very good.
Just
I'm
tell
finished.
Tom
Thank you.
Lumber, John.
I'm sorry, what was that, Councilor Sewell?
Nothing.
Chris, thank you very much. And again, to the boys, congratulations to you. Wish you best of luck with your badges, and applaud you for committing yourself to the Scout organization. Good stuff. It'll serve you well in life. So thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight. And again, if you do have questions during the meeting, do raise your hand. Hopefully it'll get my attention, and I'd open the floor to you if you want to say, hey, what's with this issue? What are you guys talking about? Or why do you do this and why do you do that? All right. With that, I don't see any other members of the public with their hand up at this time. Oh, Mike Bernard. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, I'm sorry, you're given one opportunity to speak. If you do have anything else, I'd encourage you to follow up with an email. Otherwise it could go on and on and on tonight. So sorry for not affording another opportunity, but yeah, please don't hesitate to follow up with email. And again, I'll try and get someone from the staff to get back to you after tomorrow morning. So, all right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time from the public that hasn't had a chance to speak? All right, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. All items listed, well, we have the minutes for the September 28, 2020 roundtable and regular city council meeting. So, and yeah, I think that's it. So council, do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the September 28, 2020 roundtable and regular city council meeting. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, motion is approved. Now, as is our protocol, we will immediately go to items that have been taken off the consent agenda. So we'll go to the warrants. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the claim warrants as presented by the claims report as presented by Director Hammoud on October 8, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the warrants as presented. Is there any further discussion, council? I'll turn it over to the chair of the F&A committee, which is effectively our auditing committee.
Just report to the council that per our procedures that are in place during the pandemic emergency, the warrants and claims were reviewed by the members of the F&A committee. There are no outstanding questions that were presented by any council member, and the F&A committee unanimously recommended that you approve them.
All right, thank you. Councilor Shepherd.
Yes, I'm concerned about not being able to see the warrants, and so I won't be voting to approve the warrants.
I see no further discussion from the council members, but we do offer prior to votes during the regular council meeting an opportunity for the public to speak prior to action. Chris, I see your hand is up. I don't know if you just forgot it was up or if you have something more to say or about, oh, there we go. Okay. All right. With that, council, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay.
No.
Okay. With that, we will move on to reports. Parks and Public Works Committee, is there any report?
None at this time.
Community Development Committee, Agenda Bill 20086, Resolution 1556, adopting the 2020 to 2025 King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan and the 2020 City of Snoqualmie Hazard Mitigation Plan Jurisdiction Annex.
Shall I read it? The King County has adopted their 2020 to 2025 update to the King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, and the City of Snoqualmie has completed their 2020 jurisdictional annex to it. FEMA and King County have both reviewed and approved the 2020 to 2025 King County Plan with a recommendation for the City Council to adopt the plan with the 2020 City of Snoqualmie Hazard Mitigation Plan jurisdictional annex in order to continue to be eligible to receive grant funding and maintain a community rating system class 5 status. Resolution 1556 adopting the 2020 to 2025 King County shouldn't be a motion?
Yes, if you could read the motion, please.
Doesn't have a motion on there. So is there a motion to approve the resolution 1556 adopting the 2020-2025 King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan and the 2020 City of Snoqualmie Hazard Mitigation Plan Jurisdiction Annex? Is there a motion?
Second.
So moved. Second, whichever.
Okay. All right. There's been a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 20086 as stated by Councilmember Ross. Is there any discussion, Council? Or, I'm sorry, is there any member of the public that would like to comment prior to action? I'll give a chance for any of the members of the public to raise their hand. All right, seeing none, Councilmember Shepherd and then Councilmember Ross. Or, I'm sorry.
Can I speak?
Yeah, Councilmember Chair, I'll let the chair of the committee speak first. Councilmember Ross.
Okay, so the Community Development Committee, we approved moving this forward for approval by the council. And the King County and the city worked on a collaborative planning process that engaged the public. They assessed the risk and vulnerability of natural hazards. They developed a mitigation strategy and created a plan for implementing. The Snoqualmie plan has been updated to reflect current events, such as COVID and the cancellation of the Salish expansion. Overall, the plan is well done and includes a detailed 2020 action matrix that correlates to individual plans that are detailed with responsibility, mitigation strategy, objectives, and performance measurements. So I am for approving the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ross. Councilmember Shepherd.
Yeah, so I was going through the City of Snoqualmie Annex CDC 10/05/2020, and I'm seeing that it said that the city has experienced less than 10 fires per year, but then it also says that the number of fires that are counted, it looks like maybe we're not counting all of the fires that we've had. My question is the 8/1/2018 fire on Mountain Avenue downtown counted? Because it sounds like they said they didn't have any from downtown. And also the 8/4/2018 fire on Fairway, was that counted? Because those two happened the same week. And then just before that, that same residence was also on fire. And so I wanted to make sure that we counted all of those. And the public outreach events that they had on September 17th and September 25th of 2019 had very few attendees. And I'm curious what the outreach was to try to let the citizens know that there was a meeting for this. I think that the downtown residents should be very engaged on this. And then also I noticed that for the landslide, it looks like according to King County's IMAP that there's some slope and hazard areas inside the city limits that actually I think is a significant portion of the northern border of the city that's inside the city limits, as well as the area that is over by the mill site. That's also been identified as having landslide threat, according to one of the exhibits. And most of the city has not been evaluated according to the IMAP landslide data. So I just like to see those things corrected.
All right, there was a Chief Carrera. I hope you were keeping your notes. Or Councilman Ross, did you want to respond to some of them?
Well, I sent this out to everyone for the review starting September 28th. And so I'm maybe you sent this in writing requesting information, but you're throwing a bunch of questions out right now that are pretty in detail, and it could have been handled easily if you sent an email so they have a time to review.
All right, I'll see if Chief Carrera can at least address some of the items probably fairly easily. Chief
No,
Carrera?
I'm pretty, Mayor, I'm trying to dig up this. If Councilmember Shepherd could repeat the section that she was just talking about, I'll certainly look at it. I'm pretty confident that the number for the structure fires was accurate. But I just need to understand which section she was in.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll send you an email with what I've just described. I think these are minor edits?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mayor, if you'd like, I can take her email, and then if I think it's the intention to approve it tonight, and then we can always make those changes if they are inaccurate, if that pleases the chair.
That would be fine with me if it's fine with the rest of the council, if it's just correcting errors and so forth, or yeah, incorrect information, that's fine. And I would just ask us to CC the rest of the council in your response to Councilmember Shepherd to those questions. And then Mark, I think maybe you were going to respond to the mill site issues. I know that after the Oslo landslide, the state did extensive LiDAR analysis around communities all over the state. So did you want to speak to that, Mark?
Yes, please. Thanks, Mayor. For all three issues, it's the structure fires section starting on page 6, Chief. And so that's where you'll find her citations for any errors on counts. As far as the second issue on landslides, King County actually did quite extensive mapping of those. Most of them lie adjacent to the city, just outside. The portion that kind of rings the north of Snoqualmie Ridge is open space, as it is in the city. Then it slopes downward into the county where most of those landslide hazards exist. The area north of the mill site is outside the city. The third issue, Gwen's here as far as the civic engagement. I believe there are only 1 or 2 people at the public meetings, and I would agree that we need more participation, but this plan does capture the expertise. It intended to capture public comment, but they weren't well attended, but they were performed satisfactory, and any input we did receive is in this document. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Councilmember Shepherd, you still have your hand up. Did you have more questions or comments? All right, thank you. Any discussion or comments, council, questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Is there any other report for Community Development Committee?
No other report.
Thank you. Finance Administration Committee, any report?
No report.
Public Safety Committee, any report?
No report.
All right, and then we're on to Committee of the Whole, and we do have an opportunity for continuation of the Budget Roundtable. I didn't get a sense that there was any unfinished business there. Were there any further questions on the general fund budget or operational budget at this time? And again, we'll take up utilities in earnest at our next meeting. Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Lassay.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was going to say something at the end of the roundtable, but I didn't want to extend the meeting, giving Councilmember Sunwell more time to eat his food. I just wanted to reiterate during that discussion that I felt that every council member brought up really good points, that people truly are the backbone of the community and are far more important than equipment. But we have to balance those things. And as council members, we have to weigh those against each other. I also wanted to point out that having the entire budget proposed can confirm then all of the things that we've accomplished over the last 9 months of review, and it's going to be important to do that. And this is no means putting pressure on anyone. I want to emphasize that completely, but we do need to make sure we have time to discuss anything that may come up. There may be small items, there may be something that that comes along that we need to review, and I just want to encourage us to make sure that we do have enough time to not to address the budget issues that we can address for 2020, 2021, and those that we can't address in this budget, that we absolutely make a tried and true, or whatever euphemism we want to use, to have those discussions in January to make sure we do address the affordable housing issue. We do address the fire truck if that's something that continues forward, that we do address all the other issues that we know we need to deal with. But for the sake of moving forward, we need to look at the budget as it stands. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I didn't see who was up first, Councilmember Sunwell or Councilmember Jeans. I'm sorry, I didn't see who raised their hand first.
Sunwell.
All right, Sean, go ahead.
Sure. By the way, this popcorn's outstanding. So as I look forward, sort of what Councilmember Lassay was saying, By my count, we have, oh, do we traditionally do council meeting on the week of Thanksgiving?
Yes.
We do? Okay. So we've got 3 council meetings left before December. So one of the things, and maybe this is for Councilmember Mayhew to figure out, but I would like to have sort of in my mind, I have this idea where maybe our first attempt to pass the budget is on the 23rd, with the fallback being the first one of December. But with the goal, that sort of builds in this, if we have an exceeding number of questions, right, we do have a fallback. But I would love to see no later than December 23rd, us have an opportunity to approve the budget, the operating budget.
We traditionally do not do a council meeting during the Christmas week. So usually in at least the 20 plus years I've been involved, we wrap up and put a bow on it on the first week of council meeting of December, and then cancel the second meeting in December. So our plan would be to have it wrapped up by then. To Councilmember Lasay's point, the only thing that would make me nervous, Robert sent an email pointing out that by the second meeting in November, we need to have the council approve. Robert, did you want to speak to that, the 1% or the?
Yeah, well, first I did want to, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. First I did want to mention, it's actually a city ordinance. In our city ordinance, we have to pass the budget by that first Monday, or that, excuse me, the second Monday in December. So the first meeting, that's by city ordinance. You could, and Bob Sturbank could weigh in, I mean, worst case scenarios, the council could maybe suspend that ordinance, and you do have to the end of the year per state statute. But on the property tax, yes, the property tax has to be submitted to the county assessor's office by November 30th.
That was actually my whole point. So we need to have it done by the first meeting in December. Let's shoot for the second meeting in that Thanksgiving week meeting. And that'd be great if we were done. If not, we have these sort of the final backstop of the week it has to be done anyway.
Yeah, so my only point on the November 30th deadline was that if there's any reconsideration, we got a commitment that we felt we heard pretty clear from the majority of the council, a strong majority of the council, to build in the 1% plus bank capacity in the biennium budget in 22, the 1%. If there's any reconsideration of that by the majority of the council, we need to know that now, because that would swing things in the wrong direction by another $100,000 plus. So, Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, I was just going to respond to Councilmember Sundwall that that timing is exactly what the plan is to hit that timing just as you laid out. And there's some other mechanics around that have also been planned for public hearings and so on, but you've got the timing right. That is exactly where we're all headed. And by the way, that's why you're hearing tonight, since we know we're going to take the next 2 sessions largely on utilities. That's why there just won't be much time. When I made that statement earlier, it's because of exactly the timeline you identified. And so that's our intention. 3 meetings from now is when we'll need to put a bow on it and pass make our decision on taxes, and hopefully the budget that night. If not, we have one more meeting for the budget, but we would have already had to decide on the revenue side.
All right. Councilor Jeans and Sunwall, you still have your hands up, or do you have additional questions? Councilor Jeans.
James Mayhew, you sort of queued up my inquiry for you and for Robert Hammoud. Since we're going to be maybe spending 2 roundtables on the utilities, would you please give us an agenda or some guidance on what we're going to try to cover at the next meeting, so we can do some preparation for that? Thank you.
All right. Did you want Robert to respond to that now, or that's just more of a comment?
Comment. I don't a commitment. I mean, I think they'll probably do that, but I'm hoping they'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shepherd.
So when is the best time for us to have the public come to a council meeting and talk about budget?
That's a great question. Joe, do you want to take that one? There's kind of a protocol. We usually do the public hearings on the budget, or maybe Robert, if one of you want to take that. I know there's kind of been a protocol we followed year after year. Jody or Robert, if you want to take that one.
Let me just take a quick look here at the budget calendar that we put together. Just take a sec here.
I mean, frankly, Councilmember Shepherd, there's nothing that precludes the public from coming to any one of the next council meetings and during public comment period, you know, giving some input about a priority that they might have.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Yeah, somehow I suddenly was muted.
There will be a public hearing on November 9th and 23rd.
Thank you.
Those will be noticed both on our website. Our communications team will get notifications out, and copies of the preliminary budget will be available on November 1st.
All right, thank you, Jody.
Yeah, and we're also going to put it on the website too. So we'll have the mayor's transmittal, the preliminary budget on November 1st. So we'll have a summary budget document similar to what we did last year. Pretty much the forms that you saw, we'll put those in more of a presentation form for the public, put them together in a brief document. And then that'll also include a brief discussion of the revenues as well. Now, just a side note, again, we're aiming for that first meeting in November when we do have the public hearing to do the update on revenue estimates. That would be the time that if there's, I mean, we're not expecting any surprises, even though we've had a lot of surprises locally lately. That would be the time if there are surprises either up or down, we would, entertain a discussion at that time to make adjustments. And you can make adjustments right up to the passage of the budget as well, even after the public hearing is started.
All right, so seeing no other hands up or further discussion on the roundtable, we'll move on to, I'll invite Nicole Wiebe to come forward with a short presentation on lighting, Christmas or holiday lighting issues. And it's, I'd like the council's, looking for your council on, given the significant financial challenges here, I think all of us feel that the community desperately needs at least something cheerful. It also, I think, builds goodwill or nothing but political capital with the community here, which is something we're going to need in spades in the coming year or two. But at the same time, we don't want to get too sloppy with the costs here. So there's a couple options facing us on the costs, and I'll cue it up to Nicole to lay those out for you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm having troubles with my camera, so I'm just going to have to leave that off, and you can just listen to my wonderful melodic voice. I'm here tonight to share, to share with you some scenarios that we were considering for the Ridge lighting. So if you can go to the next screen, whoever's running it. Thank you. So I'm going to go through all three of the scenarios and then save your questions if you have any for the end. I think everybody here on the call knows that until this year, the lighting up on the Ridge has been done by the ROA. And this is the first year that we are financially responsible for providing the labor to do that work. So I've taken some time working with Parks and Public Works to create these different scenarios. The first scenario is one that I do think is an addition that would be impactful and festive and would take the lighting and our city to perhaps just another level. And it would be attaching, and I'll have a picture for you on the next slide of what this looks like. Pole decor for the 14 poles that are on Center Boulevard. Normally those poles would have a winter pole banner, but instead of the pole banner, we would put up this snowflake. There is a one-time inventory, cost for these snowflakes. They are made locally in Oregon from a company that is based out of Kenmore that has many cities in the state as customers. They're aluminum, and if we take care of them correctly and we store them correctly, they can last a minimum of 10 years up to 20 years. The labor to install those would be done by the pole banner vendor that would be putting up the winter pole banners in November and then in January. There are 84 trees up on the ridge that are located on Center Boulevard, Kinsey, and Mayrand. So in scenario 1, the recommendation is to just light the 44 trees on Center. The lights, there was lots of chatter in the last year or two with council and also the community that the lights that have been used are a mixture of cold and warm. When a strand would go out, they would purchase new lights and they didn't match. So the recommendation is that we purchase an inventory and we just start with a new baseline. This pricing of these lights is using a vendor who would also install the lights, and they would be able to get wholesale pricing, which is cheaper than what I could get if I were to purchase them on my own. So the total cost for scenario 1 is $28,480. The next scenario, scenario 2, is also using the pole decor, the snowflakes, lighting the 44 trees on Center, and then taking the 40 trees on Kinsey and Mayrand and wrapping just the trunks of those trees. Then the last scenario, scenario number 3, is doing the pole decor, the snowflakes, and then lighting all of the trees, all 84 trees above in the branches, but not the trunks. And then if you can just scroll down a little bit, whoever, thank you. So this additional feature we have here is the snowflake skyline. And I'll show you the picture in the next slide. We can go to that next slide, whoever's running it. That has a cost of $3,600, and we would propose that this would go across Center Boulevard at the beginning, like at the Parkway. We need to work out a lot of engineering details, where they would be attached. Could we get permissions if we had to attach them to buildings? So this is still a bit unknown, but that is one of the wishes. And the 2 snowflakes that are on the ends, that happens to be the same snowflake as the one in the little picture, that is the pole decor. So those are the scenarios, and if anybody has any questions.
So if you could scroll back up to the scenario and costs, I mean, you could go as little as 18,480 or 18,500 if it was no addition of snowflakes, just doing the 44 trees on Center. But again, it's so the fundamental question I guess I would put to the council and get a sense of where the majority's leaning is. Would you at a bare minimum want to keep it at least the same or status quo of what the ROA was doing? Or do you have any appetite for backing it down from there, which is what it would be in scenario 1 or scenario 2 with either 44 trees lit on Center Boulevard and then taking those side streets out of there to reduce costs? So it would just be helpful to know from the council if, again, given the fiscal challenges we're facing, if you support still that this is where we need to invest some dollars. They're not huge comparative to the entire budget, and given what the community needs to, still move towards scenario 3, and whether we would add some of those additional costs, some of which are sort of one-time investments. I'm sorry, there's a whole lot of hands up. I wasn't noticing, paying attention. I didn't see who went up first, so I'm just going to start from the top. Councilmember Sunwell.
Yeah, so to me, scenario 3 is nice but wasteful. I believe, given what cutting we're doing, I think scenario 1 is sufficient. My question is, I feel like downtown, the city does a fair amount of the labor. Why can the city not do some of the labor on this?
It takes, I'll let Brian Krause come to this if I don't answer it appropriately, but the city staff does do the downtown lighting, and it takes, depending on the weather and the different challenges, it can take 3 weeks to 5 weeks to be able to do that. And we are bound by a deadline of, I think November 23rd to try to get this all done. I do have a quote of what of the cost for staff to do it, but I just think that it's a capacity resources issue. But that this scenario here is an outside vendor, but I do have the pricing if it was done internally, but I think it might be a challenge for them.
Nicole, what would be the pricing for years following? Because I obviously will have labor each year,
That's
but
correct.
we don't have, so what would the 28,000 option look like in 2021?
In 2021, if I'm being completely, open and transparent, we might not even have the $1,500 fee. We might be able to pay for that out of the pole banner budget, but I wanted that to be in there. We wouldn't have any equipment cost. The only cost we would have would be the installation. So best case scenario for scenario 1 in 2021 would be, let's give or take, $15,000.
No, about half. Okay.
Yeah, I'd want to give us a little opportunity if we had to replace some of the lights, and if services for that company goes up 3 to 5%.
On your option, you could have an option of dialing back some of downtown to shift those labor costs to the ridge, but
That is conversations that we have yet to have, that I think that we will have this year. What are some efficiencies that we can make?
Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, so just to make sure I understand this, is scenario 1, is that in your view equivalent to what was done last year by the ROA, or is that additional to what they did? Or I just wasn't clear on which of these scenarios we thought was equivalent.
Sure. I would say it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. In my opinion, by offering the snowflake pole decor, I think we're enhancing the lighting, and we're doing something that not all cities are able to do. But by lighting only center 44 trees, that is a reduction, and the businesses that are on Kinsey and Mayrand might not like that. So if we wanted to do status quo and we did the same thing that ROA did last year, then we would do scenario 3, but take out the pole decor, and we would just be lighting 84 trees.
Wow. So basically, so do the same as before, it would be $35,000.
Because that's different than the estimate we were given at the time we voted on taking this over from the ROA. That the number then, as I recall, was in the low 20s. So I'm kind of surprised by that.
That's because Councilmember Mayhew, the ROA was not counting the equipment costs. They were basically handing over all the lights that were cold and hot. Nicole's looking to just get a clean. I don't know if any of those can be recycled, but you can see that in scenario 3, 18,500 or almost 600 of the cost is just the equipment. So
thank you for clearing that up. Got it. The one question I have on that is that I thought last year, and evidently I'm wrong, I thought that there was a big kind of discussion, I'll use that phrase, big discussion about the hot and cold lights. I thought the ROA during the course of last year fixed that, so all the lights were in fact the same. Is that not the case?
I can't answer that. I don't know for sure. I just know that it was a discussion, and maybe they did fix it. It's one of those things, if you're not paying attention to what you're purchasing, you can purchase cool when you mean to be purchasing warm. But I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm very aware of the issue. I notice it every time, but I am virtually, I'm pretty sure that the ROA spent a bunch of money last year, and they actually fixed that issue. And so I would have expected that all the equipment that they're handing over to us actually is a consistent light color. So I don't know if we were able to verify that was true, maybe that changed some of these, changes some of these costs. But I share Councilmember Sunwall's view. I think it's a really, so I think we should, of course, light center, but I think it's really tough to spend extra money, in my view, extra money on enhancing the lighting when we're asking our staff to give up their COLAs, and potentially looking at layoffs. So I'm sort of reluctant to go with the more expensive options.
Yeah, so so if you were to do status quo like the ROA did, it would be scenario 3 without the bowl decor, which would basically take 10,000 out of the bottom line. It would be 35,000. However, and I'm glad you raised the question because I do want Nicole and Brian to press Amy and the ROA further as to what happened to those lights, because many of those they just replaced last year and they're fairly new. So it just seems like it seems kind of wasteful that we can't recycle at least maybe 50% or 75% of those lights and use them again. I'm not sure if they didn't get handed off properly or what's going on there, but so it would reduce that considerably.
And Mayor, just to be clear, I favor, if we can, without, if we can get there, doing something at least similar to what they did last year, I think is what I hope we can do. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, if we can keep that cost down in the, I mean, right now there's $18,600 worth of cost on equipment. If we can cut that in half and, drop that price considerably, then maybe we'll go for the additional trees on the side streets. But it sounds like maybe the preference is to at least try to get back to where it was status quo, not get too crazy with the bells and whistles, at least for this year. It can be revisited maybe perhaps next year, the next year, or 22, depending on how things are landing. I hope the council can appreciate why I needed to bring this back to you before we go out and do it. Because I can imagine a lot of you, if we just did Center Boulevard, would go, what were you thinking? We gave you direction on doing at least what the ROA said. So I wanted you to appreciate what we were struggling with here on this. We kind of wanted to raise the bar a little bit, but obviously costs are a challenge. So any other, I'm sorry, Councilmember Holloway and then Councilmember Shepherd.
So I guess I'm a little further than Jim. It's do what we did last year with last year's equipment. And if anybody complains that we got warm and hot and cold and green or whatever lights, advise them. And we kept the fireman on, or we kept the police officer on. I am disinterested in spending money to get all the lights the same color. Do what we did last year with using the existing equipment to the extent possible.
Right,
That's it for me.
Ross. Thank you. Councilmember Ross.
So I'm fine with whatever we did last year. And I think I'd like to have everything matching. And so we just buy the additional strands that we need to that don't match, that is in the minority. But I also think we need something that's going to draw people from the Parkway onto Center Street. And I like the idea of the snowflake skyline that borders Center Boulevard and the Parkway. I think that'll help. We need to get people to the restaurants and the stores and stuff. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll look really nice and appreciate Nicole's work on this.
Councilmember Ross, one of the things I would like to share with you, it's not a skyline, but I've had conversation and I have agreement from the Hampton, and they will be lighting the Spring Plaza area, which is at the intersection of Parkway and Center, as a way to help make it more festive up there. And then that will be part of the Snoqualmie Winter Lights month-long lighting. And so I will be able to put that on the map. So we'll be able to draw our own community and our visitors to not only the downtown or starting at the Salish, but also up onto the Ridge and to the Hampton area. So I think that intersection, because of the Hamptons' efforts, will be brighter than it has been in the past.
That's great. Sounds good. Thanks.
And I'm sorry, I failed to note that one of the importance I think the council felt in doing this was that it's supporting a business center that is suffering dearly right now with COVID crisis. Councilmember Shepherd.
Yeah, so I like all of the ideas that Nicole has offered us. I mean, they're all really great, but I do wanted to keep the prices or the cost down. So I would like to just say, let's keep it under $20,000. And however they want to do that.
Councilmember Shepherd, I assume you're saying that price, assuming that we can recycle most of the equipment that the ROA had?
Well, I'd be okay with, just doing the snowflakes and not doing the trees, or just doing the trees, not doing the snowflakes. And I think at one point you had said something about something could be as little as $18,000. And I'm not sure if you misspoke or what, but I would like to see us try to keep the amount down. And if the businesses want to pitch in, then they can make it grander.
Yeah. That would be the bare minimum. What I was referring to was scenario one without the snowflakes. If you take the $10,000
That's
of
fine.
equipment and labor out of the snowflakes, then you can take that $28,480 number and take 10,000 off of it. That gets you just south of $20,000. But again, that's a step down from what the ROA has been doing. That's just doing Center Boulevard and then reducing it by 40 trees that don't on the side streets that don't get any treatment. Councilor Mayhew and then Councilor Holloway. You're muted.
I think I was last, Mayor.
I think I lowered my hand.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, Mayor, I just want to make sure, I know it's a little off topic and so maybe it's not germane, but I just want to make sure that there's no question about the Top Hat being involved this year at the Winter Festival. I'm pretty sure that would be missed if it did not occur.
Yeah, I think Nicole's probably scheming up some sort of virtual version of that with the tree lighting or whatever, but yeah.
I have heard from constituents that this is important to them.
Okay, yeah, happy to do so.
Hey, Jim, tell Ramsey she'll get her wish.
Councilor Lassay.
I just wanted to make a point is that I too also believe we should limit the amount of expenditure on this, but I don't want to limit it to the point at which we don't think longer term. I do not believe that the ROA left us with stuff in very good condition. So if we go down the path of let's reuse what they did last time, we're essentially saying we're going to reuse what we did last time for the next 3 years, because we're definitely not going to have any money in the budget for 2021, and we're definitely not going to have any money in the budget for 2022, and then we may revisit it in 2023, and maybe by 2024 we'll be able to do that. We're talking at a bare minimum here. $5,000 for 44 lights, for lights to illuminate 44 trees is not very much money. I trust the staff to be able to work out a way to make that happen. I also support what Councilmember Shepherd said. Let's put a cap on it at $20,000 and figure out what we can do. But I would be very cautious of reusing what was left from the ROA, mainly because I don't have a lot of confidence that it's all going to work and it'll look. I just think it'll be a better look if we went at it from the standpoint of let's purchase something now that will last for some years to come.
All right. Any other comments or input? Councilor Jeans.
Including last year downtown, I would think that most of the people, residents and visitors otherwise, said the city has gone over the top, last year especially. And I wonder whether we can save some reasonable money by having citizens say, well, they didn't go over the top this way. Is there something that we can not have that still gives the ambience of downtown, but does save us some money? I guess I'm asking you, Nicole, whether there is some thing where we can save $10,000 here or $5,000 there on something that just says, well, they didn't go over the top this year.
I think that we have an opportunity that this is the first year that the ROA is not doing it and the city's doing it. So if there's going to be a change, whether we make that change artistically or budgetary, this is the year that we can do it and we can fall back on the situation and the times that we find ourselves in. So the most, in my opinion, and I can debate this with anybody, but I think the most economical way and the least impactful on city staff resources, this is the most minimal, like the bear down, would be the 14 snowflake pole decors, invest the $8,500, have the pole banner installator, put them up and call it good. Now, it's different. It's not going to be as lit as the trees, but then I just wonder, again, the eye of the beholder, if the residents might go, oh, wow, that's different. You know, that's new. but that keeps us in a budget. And then, like I said, if we take care of that merchandise, the cost, it's not going to be a cost that we're going to have every year.
Yeah, and Council, I should have pointed out at the beginning, for all the reasons we keep talking about with the color of money, I'm less concerned about the equipment costs than I am about the labor. Because the equipment, as you know, is sort of more of a one-time investment, at least it lasts for a decade or so. I mean, if you penciled that out of a cost per year to accumulate that, it's pretty de minimis. It's the labor costs are the reoccurring expense, and that's the dilemma, is how do we wrestle down with the reoccurring costs? So, but this is helpful. Again, the reason why I'm bringing this back to you is this is within my new authority, spending authority, but this isn't exactly status quo typical business of the city. And that's why I wanted to get your input on it before we made a decision which way to go. So this has been very helpful. Councilor Shepherd?
Yeah, I like the idea of just doing the snowflakes, and I think it would be nice to see something different. And I think it would come across as us being reasonable with our spending and still be festive.
When you say snowflakes, you mean only the snowflakes and no trees, or you're willing to make?
Yeah, I think that's what I heard Nicole say.
No, I think she was saying to it.
That is the example I gave, Mayor, for the most stripped down. The most stripped down expenditure would be just to do the pole decor.
And that's it.
And not to add any pressure to anybody, but if the decision is to do the pole decor, I have to hit send on that order in the next day or two. There's a 6-week time window. So not to make that difficult for you.
Yeah. Okay. Council, unless you do a majority vote right now, I'm not inclined to go that direction. I'm very leery of the fact that of making it look dramatically less than what the ROA did and still be lighting up the downtown. And I think that would create a lot of consternation with the Ridge retail area versus downtown, saying, hey, how come considerably more cost than this is invested there, but little to nothing, or in fact less on the Ridge. So I'm trying to, at the minimum, try to achieve a status quo. Councilor Sunwell.
Yeah, I guess I'll close with, I think the general feedback you're getting is, whether there's polls or snowflakes or whatever, let's make it right about what it was last year. Yeah. And I'm fine letting you guys figure out what that looks like. I truly sense that everyone understands the sense of urgency around money here. And whether it costs $22,000 or $26,000 or $18,000, I'm comfortable leaving that up to you with just the charter that let's make it resemble last year in terms of presence, and let you guys do your jobs.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, the only other item I had on community development was the any COVID updates. I don't have anything that I can think of offhand. I know Rick or maybe Nicole, since you're kind of have the microphone right now, could just give an update on the status of the second round of the CARES funds.
Certainly. The second round of the CARES fund application opened up on the 7th. Is that Friday? I can't remember anymore. It's a blur. And it will end on the 16th. So far, I think I've received about close to 20 applications. They appear to all be, no, not all. I would say 3/4 of them are repeats, and then the other quarter is a few new applicants. But that will close on the 16th, and I will be reaching out to the 3 of you to try to schedule a meeting to review that in the next week to 2 weeks.
All right, thank you. Councilor Summel, do you have a question on that? Okay. You just put your hand down there. All right, Rick, did you have anything to add on any updates on COVID stuff? Okay. So with that, at this time, we will call an executive session regarding potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, section 1, lowercase I, triple lowercase I. The executive session is expected to last approximately 20 minutes, and I request that the Administrator Ruta Metkin and Attorney Bob Sturbank remain. There may be action following. Folks are welcome to remain on the webinar while we go into executive session. For the council members and the city attorney and the city administrator, though, there's a separate link. You've all been provided Jimmy, I don't know if you want to unmute, maybe say that were the council members all provided with sort of a last minute one with a different password? I don't know if there was a different protocol or the one that was previously put on their calendars, or is everyone good to go or have the link for the executive session?
There's a new
Yes, we
email
received
that
an
came
email
out,
link. Yep.
8:10.
Okay, perfect. All right, we'll see you. So if you could just leave this meeting, then we'll see you in the executive session in a moment. Thank you. There we go. I could not unmute. The host had me muted. Sorry about that. I have to come up with some sort of signal. I'll just go like a.
We need flashcards.
I'll go like this. I'll cover my mouth, or just cover your mouth anytime you're muted by the host and you can't unmute. All right. Yeah, or that. I was getting there. Oh, okay. Councilmember Mayhew moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Sunwall. Beat you to it. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right. Motion is approved. Meeting is adjourned. Everybody enjoy the rest of their evening.